we have with us my good friend and my esteemed attorney, Daniel Horowitz, to talk about terrorism and the law. What are your rights? Daniel Horowitz, welcome to the Savage Nation. Daniel?
Well, great to be here. Although you upset me a minute ago talking about the Mongols and the Goths. That really was powerful.
Well, I am a student of popular history, and I love these reenactments, whether it be of the Civil War and what it was fought for, and look what became of the country. And Hitler was, Hitler's horrors against humanity are well known, as they should be. But we have no idea what human beings are capable of doing to others. We have only an idea of it as we see the Muslim mass murders around the globe. They are very much, in my mind, the ones who do this, like the, I don't know who to compare them with. I would say the Mongols are a good comparison. Their absolute lack of humanity. And that leads us to this weird article by a guy named Glenn Greenwald, who says the FBI was right not to arrest Omar Mateen before the shooting. Do you believe that?
No, I think that they should have arrested him for conspiring to commit acts of terrorism. He fit the profile of a terrorist to the T. One of his own Muslim mosque goers turned him into the FBI as a suspected potential terrorist, and then he's going around scouting Disneyland and bars and trying to buy guns. That is an attempted act of terrorism, and the FBI could have arrested him and charged him, and there'd be 50 people alive today who were...
All right, listen to this, Danny. Hillary Clinton this week proposed an intelligence surge to halt plots before they can be carried out, which I agree with. Donald Trump called for more intelligence activity to, quote, give law enforcement and the military the tools they need to prevent terrorist attacks. But this moron, Glenn Greenwald, this lightweight, low IQ writer for the Post says this is wrong. And based on what we know, the FBI acted properly. Agents have the power they need, he writes, and they were right to close the case on Mateen. So he's saying he's right even though he killed all those people? What's wrong with liberals, Dan? You and I both know that you come from a very liberal background. A good many of your family members are tremendous people, and I don't have to mention them by name or association, one of whom is a great war hero, yet he's still a liberal. Do they still think this way?
Well, no, they've got great reservations about the surge of Islamic ideology that uses religion as a way to get into the minds of these psychopaths and then stir them to kill, because that's what all of these Hitlerites do. They take people who are very easy to manipulate, they feed them an ideology, and they turn them into killers, and that's what's being done with Islam. And it's very obvious. You can't separate terrorism from Islam, and when you look at it from a criminal case, from a law enforcement point of view, strip out the fact that it's a religion and just say, what are they teaching? What acts are people doing once they listen to the ideology? And you have a criminal conspiracy to murder, slaughter, torture, rape, and maim, and anybody who participates is joining this vast conspiracy. You have to put aside your political liberalism and just say, if there is an international conspiracy to take over the world, then anyone who participates is joining the vast conspiracy and should be arrested.
So this character for the Washington Post says, no minimally free society can prevent all violence. That's, of course, a homily. And he says, in the U.S., we do not hold suspects for crimes they have not committed. First of all, that's not true, is it? Isn't it not true? Can the police detain someone who is on a list, let's say a child molester? Aren't child molesters on perennial watch lists?
That's right, and they can be locked up even after their jail terms are served just because they're a threat.
All right, so this guy is completely wrong when he says in the United States we do not hold suspects for crimes they have not committed. I know that's a lie, because in the case of child molestation, rightly so, they keep people away from children and they keep them on a constant watch list, as they should. So why shouldn't we do the same thing for those who are associating with or have associated with terrorists?
You're not a lawyer and you know all these facts because you think and you read. These people just spit out the party line, and they don't reason, they don't use evidence. And the point that I keep making is that we have the tools, we have the Patriot Act, we can surveil these people, but we constantly call them lone wolves, which is a myth, and we have to learn to not call these people lone wolves. They're not. They are members being recruited actively by groups like CARE, by the Islamic terror groups that are more open about what they do, CARE pretends to be a civil rights group. And then once they lure them in, they give them the tools online to commit these acts. It is a vast, specific, planned conspiracy by highly trained, highly intelligent people. It does not take much to join a conspiracy. And when somebody does, like Mateen, you grab them early when they try to buy weapons or vests or surveil locations. You don't wait.
Now, Dan, you mentioned CARE. Years ago, you sued CARE on my behalf, didn't you?
Yes. Yes. And we started...
Well, you know what CARE just did 2 days after the Muslim mass murder in Orlando? They listed an Islamophobia network outer core chart, and they put my name along with other great American organizations, including a whole network like Fox News Channel, National Review, Rush Limbaugh, Savage Nation, WND, Washington Times, and others are on the Islamophobia network's outer core. How does CARE dare to get away with a thing like this?
Well, first of all, let me congratulate you on being included on that list, and let me tell everyone that you were on that list years ago. You were one of the first people on that list, and I congratulate you for that, because what you did to get on that list is what you're doing now. You never called people names. You were the only talk show host, by the way, who ever protested the killing of gays by these Islamists. You were the one who spoke out against their violence when other people were silent. So you earned it by pointing a finger at them and saying, pay attention to what they're doing. So that is a hero's award that you got.
Well, I don't know if it's a hero's award, but it's worrisome because they painted a target on my back.
Well, yeah.
Why should they be allowed to do? Why would a sane government permit a rogue group like the CARE Network do this to patriotic organizations? How does a government let this happen?
Why would they not indict them for not filing tax returns and then changing their corporate name, starting a new corporation, and jettisoning the old one with all the unfiled paperwork? And every time they want to get away from an investigation, they just fold one company, start a new one, call it CARE again, and they avoid scrutiny. The IRS could go after them. They took money from foreign entities, millions of dollars from the Saudis years ago. Nobody's looked into that. They refused to renounce violence. I deposed their leader, who called himself the next Martin Luther King Jr., and I said, then you renounce all violence, don't you? And he wouldn't. He refused to renounce violence.
Who is that leader? What was his name?
Nihad Awad is the name he uses. It's not his real name. He uses that name in America. But, Nihad Awad claimed to be the next Martin Luther King.
Well, what's worrisome is that they're actually training the FBI, the CIA, and defense agencies on Islamophobia, so-called, in order to deter them from doing their work, Dan. And this has to stop. Do you think Hillary would stop groups like CARE or actually encourage them?
You have to give yourself more credit. Your lawsuit and your fight with CARE many years ago was part of an effort by the other people, some of the other people on the list that you read, which actually caused the FBI to pull back from working with CARE and to start writing letters saying, and Congress people did this too, writing letters saying we can't trust CARE. So you should take more credit for that.
Yeah, but Dan, that was a long time ago. Now under Obama, things have reversed, haven't they?
They've reversed significantly, and CARE is certainly not prosecuted when there, in my opinion, was enough to prosecute them under Eric Holder. And my understanding was that he looked at it and that they chose not to do it. Certainly under Trump, they would prosecute CARE for at least tax fraud or tax evasion and potentially for taking money from foreign powers and then using it to create propaganda in the United States. So
all right, let's go back to the terror incident in Orlando. Why would a liberal like Glenn Greenwald write in the Washington Post, the FBI was right not to arrest Omar Mateen before the shooting, and actually congratulates himself for being a great libertarian liberal? He's nonsensical. Citizens should not forfeit their rights if they haven't committed a crime. Is he correct in that?
Well, I mean, I think the people who were murdered in Orlando lost all of their rights, and it wouldn't have been really out of line to take a man who's going around talking about killing people, supporting terror, and buying guns, and lock him up a little bit and charge him with trying to commit acts of terror. It would have saved a lot of grief, and I don't feel that my rights would have been violated or the world would be any worse by that. If that bothers this writer so much, maybe he should go to the scene of the Orlando shooting and smell the blood and look at the bodies next time something like that happens, and then see how he feels.
You know, Dan, there used to be a liberal shibboleth when I was growing up that I heard that I'd rather see 99 guilty men go free than one innocent man go to prison. Do you remember that from the liberals in New York? I'd rather see 99 guilty men go free than one innocent man be locked up. Do you remember those liberal statements of your youth?
Yeah, it makes me cringe. Of course, a lot of those liberal ideas came about when the government was all-powerful and the working people were being knocked down by the bosses who ran factories, and it was that whole Wobblies, and it was a whole different era. Now we're not fighting an oppressive government when we violate the rights of these terrorists. We violate the rights of the terrorists to carry out their Islamic philosophy to murder us. It's not really...
All right, we're speaking with the greatest attorney in the world, Daniel Horowitz, because he's my attorney. He's the only attorney I trust, other than my other attorneys. And if you have a question on I would say on, I guess best issue is civil liberties. Daniel Horowitz is the man to call at 855-407-2882. We'll continue our discussion because it's a very important one in this age of terror, which is what rights should we all give up in order to capture these vermin before they kill again? And I think that's a great topic. And remember this, if you think I deserve to win the award of being inducted into the National Radio Hall of Fame, it's real simple. You text to 36500, 36500, Savage. That's it. Back in a minute. To answer your legal questions, not about homes and fences and neighbors, but about, let us say, security, civil liberties in an age of terrorism where all of our rights have been violated because of the Muslims who attacked us on 9/11. I mean, just think about what you've given up, how those Saudi hijackers have stolen your rights to privacy, and how we go like sheep on an airplane now. Instead of racially profiling those who you think are likely to cause harm to the aircraft and everyone on it, they've made grandmothers in wheelchairs cry at TSA checkpoints. So this is what I'm talking about. Where is this going to end before we finally get smart and focus on those groups known to harbor the terrorists? We have with us Daniel Horowitz, great lawyer. Dan, welcome back to the Savage Nation to talk about terrorism and the law. What are your opinions on that, Dan, in a nutshell, about giving up our rights, our civil liberties in an age of terror? Where does this end?
Well, I think we have to give up some of our perceived rights, our extreme views of rights. It's sort of crazy, though. We need to profile, for example, more at airports. I was shocked when I flew, and when I went through security with my 5-year-old daughter, they swabbed her hands for explosives.
That's sickening.
I thought to myself, okay, they can now check off the box, swabbed, Jewish girl, 5 years old, we're not prejudiced. I think that might have wasted resources.
That's disgusting, that's sickening, but that's an example of what we're facing now in the new fascist America as a result of those Muslim hijackers on 9/11. So what's going to happen tomorrow? Listen, Dan Horowitz will be with us over the top of the hour. He's such a great guest. We'll talk about how likely is it that the UK leaves the EU. It was way ahead, and then after that strange killing, it's losing. Wow, conspiracy theories abound. We're speaking with Daniel Horowitz, attorney extraordinaire, on the issues of civil liberties and freedom and security. And, of course, the liberal argument, which is, as far as I'm concerned, this Glenn Greenwald is in Exhibit A of why liberalism is a mental disorder. He writes an article in the Washington Post, owned by Buzzard Bezos, the Buzzard. And he says the FBI was right not to arrest Omar Mateen before the shooting because citizens should not forfeit their rights if they haven't committed a crime. What do you mean citizens should not forfeit their rights? We don't want all of us to forfeit our rights. We wanted him to have his rights forfeited since he was on a terror watch list. Right, Dan? Isn't that what it's all about? Daniel Horowitz, Daniel on line 10?
We don't want to offend him. Of course, Michael, you don't have First Amendment rights. Just before Christmas, when you posted a picture of Islamists protesting outside the Danish embassy, and Facebook censored you and took it down.
Really? I didn't know that Dr. Zuckerberg did that to me.
Yes. Look at WorldNet Daily. There's a whole article on it. Facebook censors Michael Savage post of Muslims protesting with signs saying behead those who oppose Islam. You don't have First Amendment rights to insult them because they hide under religion, when what they're really doing is taking a philosophy of conquest and using our belief as to what our rights are to kill us, to take away the rights of those gay people.
But, Dan, to be honest, we have to thank liberal American lawyers for this. They're the ones behind them. You know that, and I know that.
And yet our mutual friend and my cousin, who is a very liberal American lawyer, does not go that far. And certainly Amira and those people who love him know that he is the kind of liberal who would fight to the death if they really tried to hurt us. So it's not every liberal. I think it's the liberals who've not lived in the real world and not had to support themselves. So the people who've had these blessed lives where they can just sit back in their chairs and think nice thoughts and think that if you sing Kumbaya, they'll ultimately become peaceful. Those are the...
All right, we're talking with Daniel Horowitz. If you have a question on this issue of liberty and security, which I think is a great topic, and no one wants to talk about anything else, I'm going to take your calls right now. Let's begin on KSFO in San Francisco. We invite callers from New York on WABC. We invite callers from Washington on WMAL. We invite our loyal callers on WJR, KLIF, KCMO, and all the great stations across the land. Frank, on KSFO, you're the first up for Danny. What's your question?
Hi. The Democrats have a proposal about banning guns to anybody that's on the FBI watch list.
My good friend.
Why is this a bad thing? I'm trying to figure this one out.
Horowitz to talk about.
I'm trying
Daniel, I have my answer. What are your rights? Daniel Horowitz, welcome to the Savage Nation. Daniel?
That's great to be here. Although you upset me a minute ago talking about the who's banned in Britain, who's on the Britain watch list and on the CARE watch list.
Well, I'm a student of popular history, and
that they don't take guns out of the hands of the very people who will use them to defend our liberties, and really focus on psychopaths who have a history of being Islamic terrorist sympathizers.
Hitler's
so we have
horrors
to be careful
against humanity are well known.
In
other words, Frank, what he's saying
we have
is
no
idea
what
corrupt administration of the type we now have. We have only an idea of it for any reason they want. We see the Muslim mass murders around the globe.
Okay, that makes sense.
They are very much... In my mind, the ones who do
next
this,
caller.
Like and we'll go across the country on that one.
Well,
to WJR in Detroit. I would say the Mongols are a good
question
comparison.
or comment for Daniel
Their
Horowitz.
absolute lack of humanity. And that leads us to this
Yes.
weird article by a guy named Glenn Greenwald, who says the FBI was right not to arrest Omar Mateen before the shooting.
Now we're moving into this
Do you believe that?
area of intent.
No, I think that they should have arrested him for conspiring to commit acts of terrorism.
So
he
what's
fit
your question?
the profile of a terrorist.
The question is,
to the
how many
T.
laws do we have?
One of his own Muslim mosque goers turned him into the FBI as a suspected potential terrorist.
All right, Dan,
and
do you have
then
an
he's
answer
going
to
around
that? I don't
scouting
understand it completely.
Disneyland
I think you do.
and bars and trying to buy guns. Just have bad thoughts. We can't punish bad terrorism. No matter how despicable they are. Could have arrested him and charged him, and there'd be 50 people the bar where he murdered all those people. We could have tracked his cell phone.
Hillary Clinton this week proposed an intelligence surge to halt plots before they can be carried out, which I agree with. Donald Trump called for more intelligence activity to, quote, give law enforcement and the military the tools they need to prevent terrorist attacks. But this moron, Glenn Greenwald, this lightweight, low IQ writer for the Post says, this is wrong. And based on what we know, the FBI acted properly. As liberal as they get. Agents have the power they need, he writes, and they were right to close the killing us right now. So he's saying even a turncoat, he's right even though he killed all those people? What's wrong with liberals, says the FBI closed this file because the Obama administration from a very liberal background, radical Islamic a good many of your family members crimes, tremendous people, left and I don't have to mention them by name that the FBI should have arrested
one
him.
of whom is
a great war hero, yet he's still a liberal. Do they still think this way?
This guy had a violent history. He was following that crazy sheik in Yemen who was radicalizing people. He was tied to the American terrorists who killed people in Syria. What else do you need to know that this is the real thing? This is the real deal. And then when he starts making threats to people, getting fired from the Department of Corrections training job, we should have been all over him. Either arrest him or be following him every step. Separate terrorism from Islam.
Remember the Fort Hood massacre by the Muslim major Nidal Hassan,
from a law enforcement point of view,
who killed so many people and wounded so many others. You know he has never been executed, Dan? Why is the
are
government
people doing once they listen to
keeping
the
him
ideology?
alive when he's a mass
and you
murderer?
have a criminal conspiracy
Nidal Hassan
to murder,
executed
slaughter,
13 soldiers
torture,
and wounded
rape,
56
and maim,
or
and
60
anybody
others
who participates is
in a
joining
national
this
tragedy.
vast conspiracy.
He was signing
You
off on his
have to
medical
put aside
reports
your
with
political
praise Allah.
liberalism
He gave away
and
every
just say,
symptom
if there is
of a
an
madman
international
about to
conspiracy
explode, and yet
to
the
take
army
over
was
the
so
world, then anyone who participates
shall I
is
say,
joining the
curtailed
vast
or
conspiracy
caponized
and should be arrested.
by their own political concerns that they let this maniac rage until he killed everybody. No minimally during the society massacre. So when is this going to change, if ever, Dan? Homily.
I think we really have to have more dialogue with regular, normal Muslim people.
First of all, that's not true, is it?
Get them to
Isn't it
speak
not
up
true?
and
Can the police detain someone who is on a list, let us say,
psychopaths.
let's
they have
say
families
a
overseas.
child
They're
molester?
afraid in their own communities
Are
because
child
the
molesters on
radicals
perennial
and the
watch
violent.
lists?
That's right, and they can be locked up. Really control much of the world and much of their communities. I think they're afraid
All right,
to speak
so
out.
this guy is completely wrong when he says in the United States we do not hold suspects for crimes they have not committed. I know that's a lie, because in the case of child molestation, rightly so, they keep people away from children and they keep them on a constant watch list, as they should. So why should we do the same thing for those who are associating with or have associated with terrorists?
And make them. You're not a lawyer, and you know all my facts. Because you think and you read, these people just spit out the party line, and they don't reason, they don't use evidence.
Council for Muslims facing tomorrow.
And the point that I keep making is that we have the tools, we have the Patriot Act, we can surveil these people, but we constantly call them lone wolves, which is a myth, and we have to learn to not call these people lone wolves.
Who they're calling Islamophobic,
they're members being recruited actively by groups
on
like
the
CARE,
issue. So we're going to have her on at the bottom of the hour.
The Islamic terror groups that are more open about what they
Let's
do.
go to our next quick caller on the Savage Nation, which has to do with
and
guns.
Then once
we're speaking
they
with
lure
Daniel
them
Horowitz.
in,
Rick
they
on
give them the
KSFO
tools
line 9. Go ahead, please. What's your question?
To commit these acts. It is
I'd like
a
to point out the numbers that we're dealing with when we talk about radical
by highly
Muslims.
trained,
I hear people
highly
say
intelligent
that
people.
99%
It does
of
not
Muslims
take much
are good.
to join a
Well,
conspiracy.
hold on, sir. Can you
and when
ask a
somebody
question
does,
of
like
Daniel and not give a speech
grab
on a
them
soapbox?
early when
I
they try
need
to buy
questions
weapons
asked of my
or vests
important guests.
or surveil locations. You don't wait.
Thanks for the call.
Now,
sorry,
Dan, you mentioned
a podium
CARE.
for the callers now. Years ago, you sued CARE on my behalf. Time for you to ask an expert questions.
Yes. And we started.
Well, you know what CARE just did? You want to give a speech 2 days after the Muslim mass murder in Orlando? They listed an Islamophobia network outer core chart.
Yeah,
and they put my name along with other great American organizations, including a whole network like Fox News Channel, National Review, Rush Limbaugh, Savage Nation, WND, Washington Times, and others against who they sell the Islamophobia network's outer core. And how does CARE dare to get away with a thing like this?
No discrimination. Let me congratulate you on being included on that list. Let me tell everyone that you were on that list years ago to protect the United States. You were one of the first people on that list, and I congratulate you for that. Because what you did to get on that list is what you're doing now. You never called people names. You were the only talk show host, by the way, who ever protested the killing of gays by the Islamophobes, the Islamists. You were the one who spoke out against their violence when other people were silent. So you earned it by pointing a finger at them and saying, pay attention to what they're doing.
That's a great answer.
That is a hero's award.
Now let's go to the next caller. Washington, D.C. David on WMAL line 4. Worrisome because they painted a target on my back. Why should they be allowed to do? Why would a sane government permit a rogue group like the CARE Network do this to patriotic organizations? How does a government let this happen?
Why would they not indict them for not filing tax returns and then changing their corporate name, starting a new corporation, and jettisoning the old one?
What you're asking is,
with all the
if they practice Sharia law, is that an indicator that they're radicalized?
They want to get away from the investigation. They just impose one company, start a new one, look CARE again, and they avoid hire them for the IRS involving children, go after them, security, where they have took money from foreign entities, I think millions of dollars from the Saudis years ago. Radical view. Nobody's looked into that. Should be looked at carefully. They refused to renounce crazy ideas about business. I deposed their leader, who called himself the next Martin Luther King Jr. I see what you're saying. And I said, then you renounce all violence,
you're not running the Justice Department. I wish you were.
Refused to renounce violence.
Thank you very much. That leader? What was his name? Quick call right now on the Savage Nation. Let's grab it while we can.
Not his real name. He uses that name in America.
Tommy, line 1. Question or comment
Nihad
for Dan?
Awad claimed to be the next Martin Luther King.
I was wondering.
Well, what's worrisome is that they're actually training the FBI, the CIA, and defense agencies on Islamophobia, so-called, in order to deter them from doing their work, Dan. And this has to stop. Do you think Hillary would stop groups like
Can he be arrested
for what? Or actually encourage them?
You have to give yourself more credit. Your lawsuit and your fight with CARE many years ago was part of an effort by the other people, some of the other people on the list that you read, which actually caused the FBI to pull back from working with CARE.
You're not going to know who they are until they do the horrible crime, and then they're usually dead, so it's almost a moot point.
Writing letters saying we
By the way, Tommy, are you voting for me to be inducted into the
but
Dan, that was a long time ago. Now, under Obama, things have reversed, haven't they? Yes, 36,500, 36500 Savage.
Prosecuted when there was, in my opinion,
36,500 Savage. I'll be right back. This is Michael Savage with our great guest, the attorney Daniel Horowitz, on civil liberties and terror.
Under Trump, they would
living in crazy times,
CARE for at least tax fraud or tax evasion, and potentially for taking money from foreign powers and then using it to create propaganda in the United States.
People die let's go back to the terror incident in Orlando. Why would a liberal extinction like Glenn Greenwald, right in the Washington Post, annihilated? The FBI was right not to arrest Omar Mateen before the shooting, and actually congratulates meat markets for being a great libertarian liberal. He's nonsensical. Citizens should not forfeit their rights if they haven't committed a crime. Is he correct in that?
Well, I mean, I think the people who were murdered in Orlando lost all of their rights.
It's sickening how stupid
and it wouldn't have been really out of line to take a man who's going around talking about killing people, supporting terror, and buying guns, and lock him up a little bit and charge him with trying to commit acts of terror. It would have saved a lot of grief.
If this guy had
and I don't feel that my rights would have been violated or the world would be any worse
children
by that.
Would we still be talking about civil liberties? At what point
writer so much, maybe he should go to the scene of the Orlando shooting
the rights of these
and smell the blood.
Why would a guy like Glenn Greenwald, who I never heard of, say the FBI was right not to arrest Omar Mateen before the shooting? You know, Dan, there used to be a liberal, and here he is arguing that he shouldn't have been preventively detained. I heard that I'd rather see 99 guilty men go free than one innocent man go to prison. You remember that from the liberals in New York? I'd rather see 99 guilty men go free than one innocent man be locked up. Remember those liberal statements of your youth? Well, to call a liberal insensitive
it makes me cringe. Of course, a lot of those liberal ideas came about when the government was all powerful and the working people were being knocked down by the bosses who ran factories. And it was that whole
Let's take another quick call on this issue of civil liberties and security in the savage nation going across the country again.
When we
to WMAL in Washington, D.C., line 9. Go ahead, please. Chris, what's your question?
To carry out their Islamic philosophy to murder
right to the heart of
not really
right. We're speaking with the greatest attorney in the world, Daniel Horowitz, because he's my attorney. He's the only attorney I trust, other than my other attorneys. And if you have a question on liberty, I would say on, I guess best issue is civil liberties.
Long story short,
Daniel Horowitz is the man to call at 855-407-282. We'll continue our discussion because it's a very important one. In this age of terror, which is what rights should we all give up in order to capture these vermin before they kill again? And I think that's a great topic. And remember this. So you're asking how do you clear yourself from the government watch list. Dan, what does a person do if some bureaucrat puts them on a watch list? How do they fight? Simple. You text
it's hard.
To 36,500, 36,500.
That have your name on
Savage,
it.
That's it. Back in a minute.
You have to get paperwork. It's a nightmare to clear your name when it does not belong on there. And that's why you need good lawyers. But
Dan, my name is still on the banned list from England. 2009, I was banned from entering England based on complete lies, and they will not remove my name, Dan. How those Saudi over $400,000. They still won't remove my name, and have Muslims in Britain saying we will kill you, racially profiling those Sharia that think. Yeah, I know how likely to get your name off the list, Dan. Believe me, to the aircraft and everyone on it. No one can fight a government. It's almost impossible. You know that, Dan? Cry at TSA checkpoints.
What they did to you in
England this is what I'm talking about. Where is this going to end before we finally get smart and focus on those groups known to harbor the terrorists? We have with us Daniel Horowitz,
no one's ever figured out.
Great lawyer. Dan, welcome back to the Savage Nation. Talk about terrorism and the law. In this country of what are your opinions on that, Dan, in a nutshell? About giving up our rights, our civil liberties, in an age of terror. Where does this end? It's a crazy world.
I think we have to give up some of our perceived rights, our extreme views of rights.
It's
sort of crazy, though. We need to profile, for example, more at airports. I was shocked when I flew and when I went through security with my 5-year-old daughter, they swabbed her hands for explosives.
So we have a mass hysteria in America.
Okay, they can now check off the box.
Terrorism.
Swabbed,
and
Jewish
about
girls,
the opposite of terrorism.
5 years old, we're not prejudiced. I think that might have wasted resources.
Whatever his real name is, but that's an example of what we're facing now in the new fascist America as a result of those Muslim hijackers on 9/11. So what's going to happen tomorrow? Listen, Dan Horowitz will be with us over the top of the hour. He's such a great guest. We'll talk about how likely is it that the UK leaves. Anyone who's standing up for the EU. Survival is on it. It was way ahead, and then after that,
Women
strange
for America,
killing,
Christian Broadcasting
Network,
Christian Action Network,
Conspiracy
Liberty
Theories
Council,
Abound, National Review even, and they're as liberal as they come. Daniel Horowitz, attorney extraordinaire, Traditional Values Coalition, WND, Washington Times. Suddenly, we're declared un-American for wanting to live.
The liberal argument
by this group called CARE.
As far as I'm
they
concerned,
say nothing about Omar Mateen's murder rampage in the gay nightclub.
Liberalism is
so who is CARE? Why should we care what CARE says?
Owned by,
how did they become so powerful? Daniel Horowitz.
And he says the FBI was right not to arrest
on the show. Dan, how did they become so powerful?
Because citizens should not forfeit their rights if they haven't committed a crime.
They play chess very well.
What do you mean citizens should not forfeit their rights?
In 1993 by
you don't want all of us to forfeit our rights. You wanted him to have his rights forfeited since he was on a terror watch list. Right, Dan? Isn't that what it's all about?
To be a civil rights organization.
Daniel on line 10.
Because if American Muslims don't want to offend him, of course, Michael, you don't have First Amendment rights. And then they said we will use the media to change public opinion of Islamists to undermine peace outside the Danish between Israel and the Palestinians. And Facebook censored you and took it down.
But they're fronting for some terrorist front groups, are they not? Or am I wrong?
What they do is they pretend to be a civil rights group, and they then try to crush any criticism of terror activities internationally. You don't have First Amendment rights. And then what they do is they always say, well, we're very sorry that when what they're really doing 10 people were killed in Israel by a suicide bomber and using our belief as to what our rights are as if they're giving the terms, take away the right terms of those we won't kill.
Dan, to be honest, we have to thank liberal American lawyers for this. They're the ones behind them. You know that, and I know that. Fareed Zakaria, that people are complaining about. He actually had the nerve to say that Islamophobia is the reason Muslims are killing around the world, and they don't represent Islam at all. I don't know if you've seen any of this vile stuff, but he actually blames Americans for terrorist acts by Muslims, Dan. And this is on CNN. Is he an operative of CARE?
Had to support themselves. I think that there is sort of the people who have philosophy or a plan where they can just sit back in their chairs and think nice thoughts and think that if you think kumbaya, and many people will ultimately become peaceful. If you read the book The Muslim Mafia, it describes how they systematically put together plans to make Americans feel guilty for the violence that's done in the name of Islam.
Let's begin on KSFO in San Francisco. We involved in a lawsuit from New York for WND on WABC. We invite callers from Washington, WNAL.
If that's going to go to trial
probably
next year.
We invite our loyal callers on WJR,
What's that case
KLIF,
it's
KCMO,
about
and all the great
Chris
stations
who went
across the land.
undercover
Frank on
as an intern
KSFO, you're the
at
first
CARE.
up for Danny.
And when he was there, he discovered all sorts of nefarious activities. For example, money that was donated for Muslim civil rights.
Why is this a bad
CARE
I'm trying to figure this one out.
To H. Rap Brown.
Daniel, I have my answer. What do you think?
Habeas corpus petition after he killed two policemen. What does that have to do with Muslim civil rights? The problem is nothing. Who's banned in Britain? Who's on the Britain
Dan, I'm on the CARE list of
list?
Islamophobia networks out
so
of
we have to make sure that they don't take guns out of the hands of the very people who will use them to defend our liberties and really focus on psychopaths threats of violence history of being Islamic gunshots, terrorists left on answering machines. So we have to be careful when you had your lawsuit.
So in other words, Frank, what he's saying is if you get a corrupt administration of the type we now have, they could put your name on the list for any reason they want. And reviled. And that's the problem with so many in the media.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Not revered, but certainly next caller. Respected for the work I'm doing. What is wrong on that one with WJR? They would rather have a terrorist front group on. Question or comment, an American patriot like me. But I'm asking a rhetorical question, Dan. It shouldn't be about me anymore. We're now way past worrying about ourselves. We have to think for the entire nation. Let's go to the callers on the Savage Nation. Again, Daniel Horowitz is open for your calls.
When you can be arrested.
Let's go to KBOI Radio, John on line 9. So what's your question for Dan Horowitz?
My question is, how many laws do we have?
Although ISIS is a non-uniformed army,
from a non-actual action. Is it possible?
All right, Dan, do you have an answer to that? I don't understand it completely. I think you do.
So that it's not Mateen. He did a lot more than just have bad thoughts. We can't punish bad thoughts, no matter how despicable they are. But this guy scouted Disneyland.
If we were to declare war, formally declare war against ISIS, would that give the military, the police, and local departments, and federal agencies more power over potential followers? Is that what you're asking, John?
Or the freedom even to act in a weird way. And all of these killers, before they act, display signs that are far beyond just bad words. So we don't have to violate the right to...
Well, look, here's a liberal senator, Democrat Senator Joe Manchin. He's as liberal as they get. And why not do that, Daniel? What's stopping us from doing killing us right now?
Well, I think you call her...
Even a turncoat like Lindsey Graham, who I detest,
when Franklin
says the
Roosevelt
FBI closed this file because the Obama administration treats radical Islamic threats as common crimes. So even left-wingers are screaming that the FBI should have arrested him. And you agree, of course, right?
As an executive action to protect the United States, had a violent history. So probably following that crazy sheik in Yemen who in that context was radicalizing other people. He was tied to the changed. The Vietnam War who killed people in Syria. There was no difference. What else do you need to know? The Vietnam War and any other war that we fought. He's the real deal. I think. And then when the declaration of war is at this point fired from the issue, Department of Corrections training job, capable. We should have been all over him, either arrest him or be following him every step. I think we need to use legislation.
Well, remember the Fort Hood massacre by the Muslim major Nidal Hassan,
with Congress
who killed so many people and wounded so many others. He has never been executed. Not only should we ban the entry of any Muslims into America, keeping him alive when he's a mass murderer. The entire Muslim American community should be on a watch list. 13 soldiers and wounded 56. We know it's illegal. In a national tragedy. He was signing off on his medical reports with praise Allah.
If you look at that guy,
he gave away every symptom of a madman about to explode, and yet the Army was so, shall I say, curtailed or caponized by their own political concerns that they let this maniac rage until he killed everybody during the Fort Hood massacre. So when is this going to change, if ever, Dan?
Muslim community, I think we really have to have more dialogue with regular normal Muslim people due to their background and get them to speak up and so realize too, I think that a lot of them are not only just civil psychopaths, but immoral. They have families overseas and attack.
Right, so let's go to Donald Trump's statement that he wants to do nothing against American Muslims, but he does want to ban the entry of Muslims until we can figure this thing out. What about that? Would that be legal?
That would be legal, and that makes us President Obama to label a time with Syria an Islamic terrorist. It makes certainly in World War II we weren't careful about how Japanese from Japan in. We don't invite North Koreans in now to this country. Ultimately, we certainly have a right to be on our side and protect ourselves. Is insulting to to them.
Well, so maybe
I think they're afraid, and we have to stand up for them and make them fight for us.
I'll let him know the next time he appears on the show. We have time for another couple of quick questions for Daniel Horowitz on the Savage Nation. WABC in New York. Adam, thank you for calling the Savage Nation. What's your question for Mr. Horowitz?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, they're trying to create the new norm. It's going to be not normal to have your constitutional or your civil rights. So if you're one that wants them after they take them away, you're going to be branded the crazy one. So I have a question. With them trying to take constitutional rights away from American citizens and grant them to Muslim extremists, what would be the American basis for trying to keep your rights?
Dan, is there an answer to that puzzle?
Let me read one sentence from a book called Train Tracks, which I think has the most important fundamental constitutional right on earth. Michael Savage wrote, "You know, we should all be so lucky as to lie down in the grass in the cool shade, surrounded by people who love us when it's the end of our lives." That life is the most fundamental reason we have a government, we have national defense, and we have to do whatever is necessary to protect it. We have many times curtailed rights to protect life because that is the fundamental right, and we've always gone back when things have gotten safer. And so that's my answer to that question.
I didn't even know that you were reading from Train Tracks. That was a shocker, Dan. I think I was referring to visiting my previous dog, Snowy, a few days before she died, and how she was lying in the grass and the light was going out of her eyes. And I thought it wasn't tragic at all. It was just sad, but it was also quite normal in the sense that she wasn't in pain, and that when I whistled to her, her eyes lit up, because I had learned to whistle to the silent a long time before. I really am touched by that, Dan. I'll be honest with you, it threw me off. I had no idea that you even got the book, let alone remembered that line. Yeah, lying down in the cool grass surrounded by those who love us. Wouldn't that be beautiful? But what you're saying is there's a sacred nature of life itself that's at stake here, and that we're letting a group of demonic haters of life, haters of our way of life, and haters of our freedoms literally dictate the terms of our own survival. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yes. Think about how the people at the Pulse died, that moment the bullets hit them in that carnage compared to what you wrote. That's what when I balance.
Well, I see what you're saying. No, I hear where you're coming from, because, I mean, you, without getting into personal details, this whole interview, Dan, I've asked questions and I've gotten some answers that I expected, but most of them had an undertone of pathos from you because of what you have experienced in your life most dramatically about life and death, especially that situation of murder. And I think that almost every one of your answers is rooted in that particular situation. Am I correct in that?
Yes, and my family going through World War II and the sacrifice and the courage that generation exhibited to give us this life, and how we have to protect it and recognize their sacrifice. And yes, and I can feel it to some degree due to my experience.
Dan, can you talk about your father's heroism? Would it be inappropriate?
I think we can talk about it a bit, sure.
Well, as I know it, your dad, who I met once or twice at various functions, literally walked from Normandy all the way to Germany in World War II as an infantryman?
Well, he won't talk about what he did. I know that his brother was wounded many times, was a lieutenant, and when the Battle of the Bulge started, signed himself out of a hospital against doctor's orders to fight because his men needed him, and was killed, apparently, according to one of the soldiers who lived, saving the life of the men with him. And my father was just a young man who joined as soon as he could to fight, had no fighting experience, but he never complained, and he did things and saw things that he will not talk about, but he never complained about it. He always...
And he's in his 90s, isn't he? He's still working in his 90s?
Still working, a lot.
How's his cholesterol level?
You sent me that article about how the whole myth of those cholesterol-lowering drugs has been perpetrated, and I don't know how his cholesterol level is, but he's on those.
I'm joking. When you consider what men have gone through and are going through on this earth, and we sit here like a bunch of ninnies worrying about our cholesterol and our sugar and this and that, we're sitting here, oh, God, my sugar's up, my sugar's down, my LDLs, my HDLs, and you think about human history and what human beings have gone through and are going through, it's enough to make you, I guess, choke on reality and revert to laughter, which you and I certainly do on a regular basis.
Well, Michael...
Dan, go ahead. Please make your point.
Still plays tennis.
Who does? Your dad in his 90s?
Yeah.
I've never played tennis in my life. I was a ghetto kid, and tennis, skiing was never in my background. Isn't that sad? I know how to bicycle. That's about the only sport I can conduct. But your dad, he's a tennis player in his 90s. God bless him, Dan. What's his secret? I guess he's got good DNA.
I don't know what the secret is. I think that it's because nobody ever gave him anything. He had to earn it himself.
And Dan, people should know that your father is politically not very conservative. Incidentally, war hero, a true warrior, and he's not really... I don't think he likes me very much by what I've heard. I'll be right back on the Savage Nation. We've been talking with the attorney Daniel Horowitz about, civil liberties, freedom, terrorism. I think a great conversation. And I got to tell you, Dan is like a brother to me. Dan is like my long-lost brother, and we talk very often about a lot of crazy things and a lot of serious things. Dan, welcome back to the show. Dan, tell the audience what kind of law you specialize in on the show right now.
Michael, a lot of them are criminal cases, sometimes whistleblowers, but I believe that the ultimate power of the law is when you stand in front of 12 people and you talk to them, and they represent the real power of the people. I either win or lose based upon whether I'm right or not.
Well, you and I go back to the first CARE case. Isn't that how we met?
We met when I represented Andrew Cohen, the police officer who made that comedy video, and then Gavin Newsom, who's running for governor and someday president, pilloried him, basically turned him into a racist, sexist, and everything else on earth because he made this private comedy video with other police officers.
Oh, and I had you on my local show on KSFO. I think that's what,
we
right?
Then went from there.
I didn't even know how we met, but I know you and I have become very close, and I consider you family, and there's not too many people I let near me. But, Dan, the fact of the matter is terrorism and the law, this is a huge issue right now. I think it's an emerging issue. I think it needs to be taught in law schools, and I think we need to put aside all of the crap that liberals are teaching these young children about the esoterics of freedom as opposed to living and dying. The real world, the real world, the real world. That's what we're talking about, and you have lived through the real world many, many times over. You've lived many lives. You've had tragedy in your own life. You've had murder on your doorstep. You know what life is, and many of these liberals, unfortunately, live in a bubble, a fake world, and that's why I had you on the show today, Dan. Thank you so much for being with us on the subject of terrorism and the law.
Very, very anti-terror So
at the bottom of the hour, I have just such a guest. She's a Muslim woman named Raheel Razak. She's president of the Council for Muslims Facing Tomorrow. He wants to do nothing against American Muslims, but he does want to. She thinks ban the entry of Muslims group. She said, while the world mourns, what about that? Would that be legal?
That would be legal.
A woman, Muslim, a female Muslim, who they're calling Islamophobic because she can't stand up
and certainly
on
in World
the terror
War II,
issue. So we're going to have her on at the bottom
Japanese
of the hour. We
from
have
Japan
to wake up,
we don't invite North
do
Koreans
Let's
in now
go to our next
country.
quick caller on the Savage Nation, which has to do with guns. We're speaking with Daniel Horowitz. Rick on KSFO line 9. Go ahead, please. What's your question? Advisor on it.
I'd like to point out the numbers that we're dealing with when we talk about radical
we have time for another
Muslims.
couple
I hear
of quick
people
questions
say
for
that
Daniel
99% of Muslims are good.
Well, hold on, sir. Can you ask a question of Daniel and not give a speech on the Savage Nation? What's your question for Mr. Horowitz?
I just wanted to ask, they're trying to create the new norm. It's going to be not normal to
I'm
have
sorry, this is not a podium for the callers now.
If you're one that wants
this is
to take them
a
away,
time for you to ask an expert questions.
So I have a question.
Rather than giving a speech. If you want to give a speech, do it another time.
And grant them to Muslim
Clayton on
extremists.
KSFO in San Francisco. Topic, fire away for Dan.
For trying to keep your rights?
If you own a gun
Dan, is there an answer to that puzzle?
To sell a gun to
let me read one sentence from a book called Train Track,
great call.
which I think
Dan,
says
can a gun
has
shop
the most
owner
important fundamental
racially profile or discriminate against who they sell
Michael
to?
Savage wrote,
No, they cannot.
We should all be so lucky as to lie down in the grass of no discrimination along those surrounded by people
for the very
who
reason
love
I said before.
When it's
I know
the
a
end
lot
of
of
our
Muslims
lives
who will use those guns
that
to
protect the United States
is
the most fundamental reason we have a government
reporting.
We have national defense
mechanism,
and
so that when a
we have to do whatever
comes
necessary
to buy,
to protect it.
We have many times
and an assault
curtailed
rights
to protect
and
life.
he talks on the phone, and that is the fundamental right.
And
we've always gone back.
They can call the FBI in a way that the FBI responds
and
doesn't let it
I didn't
slip
even
by
know that you were
until
reading from Train Tracks. That was a shocker.
And
Dan. All right, that's a great answer.
Referring
to now let's go to the next caller. His dog Washington D.C. David on WMAL line 4. Now she was lying in the grass. Or comment? Actually, a question for Dan Horowitz. And I thought it wasn't.
Yes, thank you.
It wasn't tragic at all. It was just sad, but it was also quite normal in the sense that she wasn't in pain,
to pay
and that when I whistled to her, her eyes lit up.
Do they also
because I had learned to whistle to
Sharia law
to the
point where they are radical?
I really am touched by that, Dan. I'll be honest with you. What you're asking is, I had no idea
if they practice Sharia law, is that an indicator that they're radicalized?
Yeah, lying.
I understand that. I think that it's an indicator that we have to
but what you're saying is there's a sacred nature
if we're going to hire them for jobs involving children, security,
and that we're letting a group of demonic haters of life, haters of our way of life, and haters of our freedoms, literally dictate the terms of our own survival. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Or just think about how the people are very often. So I see what you're saying. That moment
but good luck, Dan. You're not running the Justice Department. I wish you were.
Compared to what you.
Thank you very much, guys. We got time for one quick call right now on the Savage Nation. I hear where you're coming from because you WJR Tommy line 1 question. This whole interview, Dan. I've asked questions and I've gotten some answers that I expected, but most of them had an undertone of pathos from you because of what you have experienced in your life. Most dramatically about life and death, especially that situation of murder. Can he be arrested for what? Every one of your answers is rooted in that particular situation. Am I correct in that?
Yes, and my family going through World War II and the sacrifice and the courage that generation exhibited to give us this life.
Well, you're not going to know who they are until they do the horrible crime, and then they're usually dead, so it's almost a moot point. By the way, Tommy, are you voting for me to be inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame?
Yeah, would you give out that text number one more time, please?
Yes, 36500, 36500 Savage.
All righty.
Dan, stay 36500 Savage. I'll be right fact, this is Michael Savage all the way to Germany and attorney Daniel Horowitz as civil liberties.
Well,
and
he won't talk about what he did.
Living in crazy times.
I know that his brother was wounded many times, was a lieutenant, and when the Battle of the Bulge started, signed himself out of a hospital against
forest
doctor's orders to fight because his men needed
animals being
and was
slaughtered
killed,
to the edge of
apparently,
extinction.
according to one of the soldiers who lived, saving the life
annihilated
of the men
off
with him.
The face of the earth in our lifetime.
And my
Chinese
father
eating dogs
was just
and
a
dog
young man
meat markets.
who joined as soon as he could
and we're worried about
to fight.
Violating the rights of would-be terrorists. We're sitting here arguing about how many angels there are in the head of a pin before they kill children.
And saw things that he will not talk about, but he never,
it's sickening
never
how
complained
stupid
about
we
it.
become.
He always
Dan Horowitz, he's in his 90s and overly still working in his 90s. Of civil
still working a lot. I think
how's his cholesterol level?
Talk about civil liberties in the abstract.
You sent me that article
and failed
about,
to look
how
at
the whole
liberties of the victims. If this guy had shot up Disneyland instead of that bar,
has been perpetrated, and I don't know how his cholesterol level is, but he's on
will still be talking about civil liberties.
When you consider what men have gone through and are going through on this earth, and we sit here like a bunch of men worrying about our cholesterol. Why would a guy like Glenn Greenwald, who I never heard of, say the FBI was right not to arrest Omar Mateen before the shootings, died? And you think about human history and what human beings have gone through and are going through. It's enough to make you, I guess, choke on reality and revert to to laughter, which you and I certainly do on a regular basis.
Understands the pain that the families
go ahead, please make
from Orlando
your point.
are feeling would never say something insensitive.
Who
like
does?
that.
Your dad in his 90s?
Yeah.
Well, to call a liberal insensitive
I've never played tennis in my life.
You can,
I was a ghetto kid
when tennis, skiing was never in my background.
Isn't
that sad?
And we have so many good calls.
I know how to bicycle. That's about the only sport I can conduct.
Let's take another quick call.
But your dad, I mean, he's a tennis player in his 90s. God bless him, Dan.
Going across
What's his secret?
I guess he's got good DNA.
2WMAL in Washington, D.C.
I don't know
Go
what
ahead,
the secret
please.
is. I think
Chris,
that
what's your question?
it's because nobody ever gave him anything.
Hi, how you doing?
This goes right to the heart of civil liberty.
And Dan, people should know that your father is politically not very conservative.
He was arrested.
Incidentally, war hero,
routine traffic
a true warrior, and he's not really. I don't think he likes me very much, by what I've heard. I'll be right back on the Savage Nation.
Declared mentally incompetent.
We've been talking with the attorney
Long
Daniel
story short,
Horowitz.
Ended up in court
about,
3 times, and they finally dropped it. Saying,
civil liberty. Well, what's the
freedom,
question for Dr. Horowitz? Terrorism.
Well, how do you stop
great
the
conversation.
Government from taking away our rights?
And I got to tell you, Dan is like a brother to me.
They put him on a list.
Dan is like my long-lost brother. We talk very often about a lot of crazy things. So you're asking, how do you clear yourself from the government watch list? Dan, what does a person do if some bureaucrat puts them on a watch list? How do they fight it?
A lot of them are criminal cases. You have sometimes whistleblowers that have your name on it. The ultimate power to get paperwork is when you stand and to clear your name when it does not belong. You talk to them, and that's why you need good lawyers. The real power of the people.
Dan, my name is still on the ban list from England. 2009, I was banned from entering England. Go back to the based on complete lies, and they will not remove my name, Dan.
We met
I spent over $400,000.
Andrew Cohen,
they still won't remove my name, and have Muslims in Britain saying, we'll kill you, convert you, Sharia this, Sharia that. Yeah, I know how hard it is to get your name off the list, Dan. Believe me, it's impossible. No one can fight a government. It's almost impossible. You know that, Dan? Oh, and I had you on my local show on KSFO. I think that's what...
We went, of all the people, you love England, you support England,
but I know you and I have become very close, and I consider you family, and there's not too many people I let near me. Well, I fear if Hillary wins, but Dan, the fact of the matter is terrorism and the law, this is a huge issue right now. I think it's an emerging issue. I think it needs to be taught in law schools, and I think we need to put aside all of the crap that liberals teaching these young children about the esoterics of freedom as opposed to living and dying. The real world, the real world, the real world. That's what we're talking about. And you have lived through the real world in Burger King many times over. You've lived many lives. You've had tragedy in your life. You've had the murder on your doorstep. You know what life is, and many of these liberals unfortunately live in a bubble, terrorism, a fake world, and that's why I had you on the show. And we're talking about the opposite of terrorism with us. The day after terrorist subject of attack law by Mateen, whatever his real name is, in Orlando, already CARE swings into high gear and starts publishing a list of Islamophobic people. I'm on it. Fox News Channel is on it. National Review is on it. All of the good people are on it that I can believe are on it. Anyone who's standing up for survival is on it. Concerned Women for America, Christian Broadcasting Network, Christian Action Network, Liberty Council, National Review even, and they're as liberal as they come. Truth, Traditional Values Coalition, WND, Washington Times. Suddenly we're declared un-American for wanting to live by this group called CARE. They say nothing about Omar Mateen's murder rampage at the gay nightclub. So who is CARE? Why should we care what CARE says? How did they become so powerful? Daniel Horowitz is a very important lawyer. He's on the show. Dan, how did they become so powerful?
Well, they were very smart. They played chess very well. CARE was formed in 1993 by Hamas, and there are FBI recordings of that meeting where they say, let's pretend to be a civil rights organization, because if American Muslims knew who we really were, they would not support us. And then they said, we will use the media to change public opinion to undermine peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
But they're fronting for some terrorist front groups, are they not? Or am I wrong?
What they do is they pretend to be a civil rights group, and they then try to crush any criticism of terror activities internationally. And then what they do is they always say, well, we're very sorry that, I'll make it up, 10 people were killed in Israel by a suicide bomber, but it's their policies that cause it. So it's almost as if they're giving the terms, the extortion terms. We won't kill if you stop doing this.
Well, Dan, there's a series on CNN by that creep, Fareed Zakaria, that people are complaining about. He actually had the nerve to say that Islamophobia is the reason Muslims are killing around the world and they don't represent Islam at all. I don't know if you've seen any of this vile stuff, but he actually blames Americans for terrorist acts by Muslims, Dan, and this is on CNN. Is he an operative of CARE?
Well, I think that there is a philosophy or a plan that's not just CARE. It's the overall Hamas-Muslim Brotherhood plan, and many people will put it into action. If you read the book, The Muslim Mafia, it describes how they've systematically put together plans to make Americans feel guilty for the violence that's done in the name of Islam.
Weren't you involved in a lawsuit for WND against CARE?
Still are. If that's going to go to trial probably next year.
What's that case about?
It's about Chris Gobbets, who went undercover as an intern at CARE, and when he was there, he discovered all sorts of nefarious activities. For example, money that was donated for Muslim civil rights work to CARE was funneled to H. Rap Brown to fund his habeas corpus petition after he killed 2 policemen. And what does that have to do with Muslim civil rights? Nothing, but that's what...
Unbelievable. So, Dan, I'm on the CARE list of Islamophobia networks out of core. It's worrisome because this could be a hit list for individuals who watch these lists. Isn't that true?
Well, there were threats of violence towards you, including gunshots left on answering machines when you had your lawsuit with CARE. I think you need to be careful. I've always thought you need to be careful.
Well, why is it that I, in America, am reviled by so many in the media when I should be not revered, but certainly, let us say, respected for the work I'm doing? What is wrong with Fox News that they would rather have a terrorist front group on than an American patriot like me? But I'm asking a rhetorical question, Dan, and it shouldn't be about me anymore. We're now way past worrying about ourselves. We have to think for the entire nation. Let's go to the callers on the Savage Nation. Again, Daniel Horowitz is open for your calls. Let's go to KBOI Radio. John on line 9. What's your question for Dan Horowitz?
Yes, my question is, although ISIS is a non-uniformed army from a non-specific nation, is it possible at all to have some sort of formal declaration of war so that its suspected followers are subject to additional scrutinies in this country? And people that we think to be basically splinter cells?
You mean if we were to declare war, formally declare war against ISIS, would that give the military, the police, and local departments and federal agencies more power over potential followers? Is that what you're asking, John?
Exactly, because we've basically been attacked by ISIS twice in the last few months in this country by its followers because they're too cowardly to show themselves, and it's brilliant. They know that we're not going to go bomb them if they're just putting the word out subliminally to these people.
So, why not do that, Daniel? What's stopping us from doing that?
Well, I think your caller, John, asked a very good question. He framed it correctly. You know, when Franklin Roosevelt interned 120,000 Japanese in World War II, the Justice Department suggested that it was not legal. But then they agreed that if he did it under a War Powers Act as an executive action to protect the United States, he could do that. So probably our powers are much broader in that context. On the other hand, things have changed. The Vietnam War was never declared, and yet there was no difference between the Vietnam War and any other war that we fought. I think the declaration of war is, at this point, a moot issue, and I think we're just not capable of taking the very strong actions that Roosevelt took, and I'm not saying we ever should have. I think we need to use legislation like the Patriot Act to do it more as a consensus with Congress and the President.
Well, let's take the extreme right-wing view that not only should we ban the entry of any Muslims into America, but that the entire Muslim American community should be on a watch list. I said that's the extreme view. We know it's illegal. Could it be done, though?
No, it can't be done, and it's silly, too. I mean, if you look at that guy, Muhammad Malik, you know, he was the person who reported that psycho killer to the FBI. he was the first person to report him. So it's very clear to me from my own experiences and just from reading that the vast majority of this Muslim community, while we may disagree with them on some political issues due to their backgrounds, are very, very anti-terror. So it would be, I think, an absurd, not only a civil rights violation, but a moral violation and attack.
All right, so let's go to Donald Trump's statement that he wants to do nothing against American Muslims, but he does want to ban the entry of Muslims until we can figure this thing out. What about that? Would that be legal?
That would be legal. President Obama did it for a time with Syria, and certainly in World War II we weren't inviting Japanese from Japan in. We don't invite North Koreans in now to this country. We certainly have a right to protect ourselves in that way.
Well, so maybe you should be Donald Trump's advisor on it. I'll let him know the next time he appears on the show. We have time for another couple of quick questions for Daniel Horowitz on the Savage Nation. WABC in New York. Adam, thank you for calling the Savage Nation. What's your question for Mr. Horowitz?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, they're trying to create the new norm. It's going to be not normal to have your constitutional or your civil rights. So if you're one that wants them after they take them away, you're going to be branded the crazy one. So I have a question. With them trying to take constitutional rights away from American citizens and grant them to Muslim extremists, what would be the American basis for trying to keep your rights?
Dan, is there an answer to that puzzle?
Let me read one sentence from a book called Train Tracks, which I think has the most important fundamental constitutional right on earth. Michael Savage wrote, "You know, we should all be so lucky as to lie down in the grass in the cool shade, surrounded by people who love us when it's the end of our lives." That life is the most fundamental reason we have a government, we have national defense, and we have to do whatever is necessary to protect it. We have many times curtailed rights to protect life because that is the fundamental right, and we've always gone back when things have gotten safer. And so that's my answer to that question.
I didn't even know that you were reading from Train Tracks. That was a shocker, Dan. I think I was referring to visiting my previous dog, Snowy, a few days before she died, and how she was lying in the grass and the light was going out of her eyes. And I thought it wasn't tragic at all. It was just sad, but it was also quite normal in the sense that she wasn't in pain, and that when I whistled to her, her eyes lit up, because I had learned to whistle to the silent a long time before. I really am touched by that, Dan. I'll be honest with you, it threw me off. I had no idea that you even got the book, let alone remembered that line. Yeah, lying down in the cool grass surrounded by those who love us. Wouldn't that be beautiful? But what you're saying is there's a sacred nature of life itself that's at stake here, and that we're letting a group of demonic haters of life, haters of our way of life, and haters of our freedoms literally dictate the terms of our own survival. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yes. Think about how the people at the Pulse died, that moment the bullets hit them in that carnage, compared to what you wrote. That's what when I balance.
Well, I see what you're saying. No, I hear where you're coming from, because, I mean, you, without getting into personal details, this whole interview, Dan, I've asked questions and I've gotten some answers that I expected, but most of them had an undertone of pathos from you because of what you have experienced in your life most dramatically about life and death, especially that situation of murder. And I think that almost every one of your answers is rooted in that particular situation. Am I correct in that?
Yes, and my family going through World War II and the sacrifice and the courage that generation exhibited to give us this life, and how we have to protect it and recognize their sacrifice. And yes, and I can feel it to some degree due to my experience.
Dan, can you talk about your father's heroism? Would it be inappropriate?
I think we can talk about it a bit, sure.
Well, as I know it, your dad, who I met once or twice at various functions, literally walked from Normandy all the way to Germany in World War II as an infantryman?
Well, he won't talk about what he did. I know that his brother was wounded many times, was a lieutenant, and when the Battle of the Bulge started, signed himself out of a hospital against doctor's orders to fight because his men needed him, and was killed apparently, according to one of the soldiers who lived, saving the life of the men with him. And my father was just a young man who joined as soon as he could to fight, had no fighting experience, but he never complained, and he did things and saw things that he will not talk about, but he never complained about it. He always...
And he's in his 90s, isn't he? He's still working in his 90s?
Still working, a lot.
How's his cholesterol level?
You know, you sent me that article about how the whole myth of those cholesterol-lowering drugs has been perpetrated, and I don't know how his cholesterol level is, but he's on those.
I'm joking. When you consider what men have gone through and are going through on this earth, and we sit here like a bunch of ninnies worrying about our cholesterol and our sugar and this and that, we're sitting here, oh, God, my sugar's up, my sugar's down, my LDLs, my HDLs, and you think about human history and what human beings have gone through and are going through, it's enough to make you... I guess, choke on reality and revert to laughter, which you and I certainly do on a regular basis.
Well, you know, Michael...
Dan, go ahead. Please make your point.
Still plays tennis.
Who does? Your dad in his 90s?
Yeah. You
know, I've never played tennis in my life. I was a ghetto kid, and tennis, skiing was never in my background. Isn't that sad? I know how to bicycle. That's about the only sport I can conduct. But your dad, I mean, he's a tennis player in his 90s. God bless him, Dan. What's his secret? I guess he's got good DNA.
You know, I don't know what the secret is. I think that it's because nobody ever gave him anything. He had to earn it himself.
And you know, Dan, people should know that your father is politically not very conservative. Incidentally, war hero, a true warrior, and he's not really... I don't think he likes me very much by what I've heard. I'll be right back on the Savage Nation. We've been talking with the attorney Daniel Horowitz about, civil liberties, freedom, terrorism. I think a great conversation. And I got to tell you, Dan is like a brother to me. Dan is like my long-lost brother, and we talk very often about a lot of crazy things and a lot of serious things. Dan, welcome back to the show. Dan, tell the audience what kind of law you specialize in on the show right now.
Michael, a lot of them are criminal cases, sometimes whistleblowers, but I believe that the ultimate power of the law is when you stand in front of 12 people and you talk to them, and they represent the real power of the people. I either win or lose based upon whether I'm right or not.
Well, you and I go back to the first CARE case. Isn't that how we met?
We met when I represented Andrew Cohen, the police officer who made that comedy video, and then Gavin Newsom, who's running for governor and someday president, pilloried him, basically turned him into a racist, sexist, and everything else on earth because he made this private comedy video with other police officers.
Oh, and I had you on my local show on KSFO. I think that's what
we
went.
Then went from there.
I didn't even know how we met, but I know you and I have become very close, and I consider you family, and there's not too many people I let near me. But, Dan, the fact of the matter is terrorism and the law, this is a huge issue right now. I think it's an emerging issue. I think it needs to be taught in law schools, and I think we need to put aside all of the crap that liberals are teaching these young children about the esoterics of freedom as opposed to living and dying. The real world, the real world, the real world. That's what we're talking about, and you have lived through the real world many, many times over. You've lived many lives. You've had tragedy in your own life. You've had murder on your doorstep. You know what life is, and many of these liberals, unfortunately, live in a bubble, a fake world, and that's why I had you on the show today, Dan. Thank you so much for being with us on the subject of terrorism and the law.